and I'm here with Micah Blackwell. He is the host of The Men's Couch, another phenomenal podcast about men's mental health, and is currently a student at Robert Morris University. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah.
So I'm really excited to talk to you because we were chatting a little bit in the pre-show. I don't talk to many people of Gen Z in like
Yeah.
professional context. I work with
Which,
a handful as clients, but
which
I'm
is
interested
which is
to
a
get your
bit
take on it.
it's a bit surprising to me because I feel like my generation Gen Z is more open about mental health on platforms, on internet platforms, but that's interesting. I guess there's not. I don't know if there. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, but I think it's a good thing that that's one of the reasons why I started the podcast. I wanted to raise awareness to it and to get the message out there.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
Yeah.
I do think I think like I think the millennials like we pushed it forward and then you all took it to
Yeah.
like the next level. Like
Yeah.
you went 10x what we went. I mean, we were like the sensitive generation at the time, but the stuff I see coming out of you guys, I'm like blown away by the amount of
Yeah.
like emotional intelligence and sensitivity, and even like the word vibes. Like the fact that you guys are just talking about emotions and like that's
Yeah.
just part of the parlance is
Yeah.
wild. I mean, we didn't have that when I was growing up.
Yeah. And I guess like this social media allows us and to have the platform to do those things, which can be good. So that's why I made the podcast out of my own journey and out of realizing that I benefit so much from talking about my own um, journey and like the practice of vulnerability. I wanted that to be like the main value of the show.
Yeah,
So
let's start there. Like, tell us a little bit about your journey. What got you into
my
wanting to focus on men's mental health and stuff?
so my journey started with my own struggle. I so it was like in the middle of high school, like 15, 16, and I realized that I was like struggling with depression and OCD and anxiety, and I needed to get therapy, which I did when I that was August of 2021, and I realized that you know what, like I benefit so much from this, from just focusing on my mental health, because mental health is not just about like symptoms. It's about relationships. It's about um, just your overall well-being. And I realized that this is so useful for everyone, whether or not they have a mental illness or whatever. It's just so useful for everyone, and I was inspired to just share my story because not a lot of people do, and I feel like it is very difficult for men to, especially to be vulnerable and to be honest about how we are and to be honest about our own struggles because part of that might be, and I feel like Gen Z men still struggle with this, is um, the sense of it goes against our image of that that we have to have it all together. Even though that looks different for Gen Z, it's still prevalent. Like having that the image. I don't know if it's like necessarily the tough guy image, but it's still an image
Yeah,
in
how
itself.
do you describe that image? Like, what is kind of like the Gen Z masculine norm?
I feel like because I don't want to say like it's like in the traditional masculine sense, but I think it's more of maybe like a disconnect from your emotions, if that makes sense. Maybe like you're able to like I feel like it's like just a disconnect where someone could ask me how I'm doing and I'm not really like I'll say good, but it's not like what I'm actually feeling. And I feel like it's more of that than like the outward masculine thing. Like maybe that still exists, but at least like what I've witnessed is more of an unwillingness to admit vulnerability, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm hearing it's not so much like the tough guy like Clint Eastwood thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still this idea of like having it all figured out. I think a lot of men
Yeah. Yeah.
were expected to like have the answer, or just to kind of know what's going on all the time
Yeah.
and not be messy, which a lot of us are, right? I mean, we're humans, right?
I
So
think that's the problem is it's more of not being able to accept our own messiness because we're if we have that standard of having it all together, whether it be like I guess me like specifically is mostly like with becoming a young adult and having all the answers. So if everyone in like my circle is carrying that mask, then no one's going to feel safe to have any sort of vulnerability, to say hey, or even to ask for help. And that's what I seek to do with the podcast and through other means is to break through those barriers so that we can that it by breaking through those barriers it leads to like actual connection instead of just um, like kind of just like the mask or something like that.
Yeah, well, so let's go back to your story a little bit. When did you decide to ask for help? Like, was there a moment? Was there something
It
that
was
happened? Or, yeah, what's the story?
it was wow. It was I don't want to say I was forced, but it was like kind of where I hit like rock bottom in a sense,
Yeah.
where I was just like I was so deep in depression that it was mostly like I was like I just wanted it. Like it was I don't want to say like desperation per se, but it was just like yeah, like I need this. This is like this is kind of not like the only thing, but this is going to help me, and I need to. The months leading up to that, I was kind of doing like my own thinking about therapy and reflecting on how this would benefit me, and I started to consider it, and I was just like, you know what, I'm going to do this, and I've committed to it ever since ever since then. I did have so I started out, which I reveal on my podcast. I started out with just a temporary therapist for that season, and then I switched to the therapist that I have today. So, yeah.
It was a temporary one. Like, did you go through your school or how did
Oh
you?
no, that was just so that was for I think like the teens or youth program, and that
Okay.
was more so like just to help get like out of the depression and yeah.
Yeah, how does your generation see therapy? Because I think with my generation, it was still very much like either you're an addict or a crazy person, or you're rich. I think we knew like a lot of rich people had therapists for some reason. But
For
is it more normal for y'all?
what I've witnessed is it's normalized. It's basically
Yeah.
like you get therapy. It's not like it's not even about like oh you're in a crisis situation. It's more of like everyone needs therapy. Um, at least like in at least in the circles that I'm in, therapy is normalized on campus. It's just like people will wear like shirts like therapy is cool. So it's like it's normalized, and which is a good thing for my generation. But I still feel like um, there might be there's still things um, at least with men, I think where there can sometimes be a disconnect. Um, and that's kind of what I want to do with the podcast is to say no, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to take those steps, and even before taking those steps, we have to understand we have to break through those mental barriers that can sometimes hold back.
Yeah, I find that a lot of men, yeah, struggle asking for help for sure, and I think struggle in therapy. I think our industry, it's a lot I talk about a lot on this show, is like how the industry needs to be more tailored towards men.
Yeah,
Focus more on challenging, confronting, building respect. Kind of
yeah,
bringing some masculine values into therapy. Because I think a lot
hmm
of guys like we go in and then we end up feeling like a victim, and we don't want to feel like a victim, right? We want to be a hero.
yeah,
We want to feel like we're
yeah,
getting better and that we're getting stronger, right? I think we still have that kind of masculine core to us where we want to be improving. We want therapy
hmm
to be like a more of a coaching type model, you know?
I think that could be beneficial as well. Um, I was talking to someone the other day about that. Is is therapy is therapy aware of uh, the barriers of men and like how we are? Because yes, like I believe that um, men and women like we have emotions, but the way we go about those is definitely different.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I agree with that, right? Like, I think
yeah,
we're different. We're equal, of course, but I think we're different.
yeah,
And I think a lot of the therapeutic field can be pretty feminized, and it turns away a lot of dudes asking for
yeah,
help. and it can
Hmm.
feel very threatening, because it's very
Yeah.
foreign. It's foreign to us even just to sit and have a conversation for an hour about feelings. I think like the
Yeah,
average
because
doesn't really do that.
because like if you're growing up and you're just never raised to talk about yourself or your feelings, then all of a sudden just like saying to someone, "Hey, you need therapy." That's not really like what does that mean? Like they're probably gonna be like, "Well, what does that mean?" What is so yeah.
Yeah, it can feel really weird. I'm curious for you, like, what did Gen Z men struggle with? I mean, maybe some from your own story or from guests you've had on the show or some of your friends. Like,
Gen
take a temperature of the generation. Like, what are some of the main things you hear people talk about?
body image,
Yeah,
body image, um,
so interesting. That's the first thing you say. That's
yeah,
interesting because
body
I,
im
I think for most generations that wouldn't be the first thing, but I
body
think it's true.
yeah,
Like, I think a lot of guys struggle with that, but we would never say that. You know?
body image comparison.
Yep.
Um, what else? Body image comparison, anxiety. I have a lot of friends that have admitted that they have anxiety, and also a big one is loneliness. That's a huge one. Um, that's like that's what like, for me like friendship is like one of the biggest, if not the biggest, topics on my podcast. If you, I don't know if you looked through it yet, but it's like the one of the biggest on my podcast. And yeah, I think because of like I my belief is that men might grow up without either like the tools or just feel like that's something to be prioritized. So it makes us avoidant and therefore can make us like shield ourselves from that. If that makes sense. That's my perspective.
I think that's true. I think a lot of guys are
Yeah.
really lonely, and I think a lot of guys don't know how to have emotionally intimate relationships because we're not taught to do that. We're not taught to
Yeah.
open up. So I think a lot of our friends are like very activity dependent. We can have gym buddies or someone on a team or someone shares a hobby, but the minute we stop doing that, we just lose the friend. Because
Yeah.
there isn't much more
It's
there.
about like
Yeah,
it's about the like the friendship itself. And in my personal life, my roommate Alex, he also runs the show with me. Definitely changed my view of friendship and what it could be. Like it expanded my view, and I think having those experiences, um, and also me making the decision to be open to that, and to be open to that is helped me as well. So um, I think it's so important for men to have those spaces to talk. That's another reason why I made the podcast as well. So, yeah, yeah, these are really good questions.
yeah. Tell me a little bit more about the male friendship thing. I was actually just working with one of my teenage clients earlier this week, right? And he was talking about how there's like homophobia that can come up.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
there's so much, so much.
right? Right.
Um,
But all I have to say is like I think your generation has done an amazing job of like queering everything in a way, right? I think of all the
yeah,
generations, yours is the most open to that, but it was still coming up for him
it's
from you,
ironic
so it's like not,
because
you know?
even if so, here's the thing. It's just so it kind of baffles my mind
Yeah.
because like in the 1800s, or I don't know if you've like done research on this, but like with in different historical time periods, there's evidence of intimate, authentic male friendships. But when you get more so now, it's kind of like we're not necessarily open to it, even though we are more open to different sexualities, but back then they weren't. So it's like a it doesn't make sense, but um, I think yeah, like it does that mindset of homophobia does impact a lot of friendships or even like the potential of friendship because we either don't want to scare the other guy off or the other guy feels weird about feels weird about things. That's completely like it's a completely normal um, like friendship, but their perception of it affects how we go about it, and that could be it's complicated, it's messy, and it's a fight. It's a fight that I'm willing to be a part of to have that in my life, and I think it's important to just not just go with what society says, but to kind of question like where where like what who says you can't say like you love your friend? And yeah, I just realized it's Valentine's Day, but you know, it's like who says you can't do that? And it's those social expectations that kind of that can limit it. Um, I'm hoping that like my generation, like Gen Z, is changing the narrative on that. Um, that's my hope. Yes.
Yeah, I hope that too. And it does seem like it's moving in that direction, but
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I think our society in general is homophobic, so I see it with a lot of my clients and with me, I had to overcome that barrier of, yeah, being able to say, I love you, man, right? Or being able to,
Yeah.
like, call a friend when I'm upset, even, you know? Like,
Or
even
just
that
even
is, like, difficult, of, like,
or
I'm having a
even
hard time, I want to talk to you.
or even talk about conflict because the major thing is like even talk about conflict in their friendship because it's like well guys just shouldn't care. I feel like it still exists with Gen Z. It's just that idea that guys shouldn't care, and it's like no, it's just like um, we need to if we want to fight against this connection, we have to engage in this, and that's what makes us stronger men. I think is to fight for it, and yeah,
Yeah, for sure, right? And, like, yeah, bringing up that because and I think that's true, right? Guys, you don't want to be seen as, like, too sensitive, or, like,
yeah.
too emotional or
Which
that,
for
you don't,
me,
yeah.
I identify myself as like an HSP, so it it can sometimes like I wouldn't say complicate things, but I see it more now as a gift rather than a burden. Because before when I was growing up, when I was like, oh, I'm just like a sensitive one. Now I just see it as like this is a gift that I can use for people and uh, just in general. So
Yeah, it lets you tune into people probably in a way that others can't. You're probably
yeah,
aware of more subtle things in a relationship.
yeah.
Yeah, can you describe your relationship with your, I don't know, with a roommate maybe, or with another friend, just to give our listeners about what a male friendship
Hmm.
can be? Like
Okay,
what
so
kind of info is there?
I have two important relationships. Let's start with my friendship, Dimitri. I've mentioned him on the podcast. He's also been on the podcast. It's like a brother. We're completely separate backgrounds. Like he's he's white and they're into different hobbies than me. We don't have the same hobbies, but it's like a sense of like we get each other, and we have uh, more so like for us, our faith also brings us together as well, and we're able to just talk about deep things like purpose and from depression. We talk about deep things, and it I know it's helped him. It's helped me to redefine our idea of what real brotherhood can look like, because brotherhood. I feel like sometimes we see brotherhood as just we don't see it as like the deep authenticity where we're able to be fully seen and someone is able to fully see us, and that's what I experienced with Dimitri. Uh, with my roommate Alex, uh, it's funny because how we met. We were not originally roommates. He was one that asked me to be his roommate, and I was surprised because I'm more reserved and he's more like extroverted and everything. But and we met in marching band and we just started, we got really close, and I feel like it's just like another brother that I have to walk alongside with me through life and to just go through the ups and downs through life. He's seen me cry. We've been through like everything, like literally everything together. and that's like it's so good to have. And I feel like maybe like you don't for me I don't realize that it's so rare, and that's why like I want to give that to other men so that they know that like this is what we all need, but it seems so rare because maybe like society doesn't allow us that, but we have the power to change the narrative and to engage more in that.
For sure. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's beautiful that you have that. And yeah, culture is made up of people. So it has to start
Yeah.
with the individual. You can start to shift the norms and make it okay that you can just like have friends, you know? Like
Yeah.
most people, you think people would want that, but there is a lot of fear, and there's a lot of fear out there, especially for men.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
and they helped me start the podcast, and they still help me with the podcast to this day. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think that's cool to have other guys that like invest in you, especially if they don't do the same things. You know, to have
yeah.
like kind of a council of dudes that come from different backgrounds, you know, different diversity, different socioeconomic. I think it's really cool to be able to consult like a council of brothers, you know, like a circle of men to go through
That's
life and
it's
give you
it's
real advice,
really
you
it's
know?
really when you experience it, it's like you wonder like, okay, why did I hear those messages growing up that said that this was gay? Because mostly
Sure.
like in middle school and high school, that's kind of what it was like. Um, it's like why did I hear those messages? It's like just you miss out on so much when you have that mindset, and I understand why men have that can have that mindset, whether it be just that's just how they grew up, or maybe they didn't have that type of relationship with their dad, so that affects how they show up in friendship, or they tried, like whether in middle school and high school, but they got rejected, so that kind of makes them want to like close up. And I understand it. So,
Yeah, I think there can be a lot of trauma there, but I agree. I think guys should have that. And if you look back in history, there's always been, you know, men's circles. There's always been even things like hunting parties or
yeah, yeah.
platoons or squads if you want to go hyper masculine. Like dudes have been in groups forever. I think we really work well in teams.
Mhm.
So having an emotional team makes a ton of sense. You know,
Yeah,
like
and even
we
like
need it.
just how I'm just like reading the letters. Like I like because I'm a history nerd, so like I'll like read
Cool.
stuff from history. So I was reading like how like Abraham Lincoln was talking about his friend,
Mhm.
and it was like the language that they used. It's like, well, like how we look at it today, we will see it as romance, but back then they saw it as like this is an authentic friendship.
Yeah, there was so much during that time where they're talking about like their gentleman friends, you know, and their
Yeah,
like fair friends and all this kind of stuff where they had pen pals, right? Like across the world
yeah,
that they would write back and forth. Like really intimate stuff.
yeah.
It's cool. I think it's really cool. And we don't
It's
have that
interesting.
today, really, you know. It's not
Yeah,
normalized.
yeah, yeah.
You know, what kind of history do you like? Is there a certain time period or a certain culture that you're
I mostly like wrote history from like up until 1500 AD. That's like my solid history. So
nice?
I think it's interesting, especially the Middle Ages and ancient times is really interesting.
Yeah, ancient history is wild. I mean,
Yeah,
masculinity was all over the place then too, right? If you look at like
yeah,
and sexuality too, right? Roman culture and Egyptian culture, right, was like seemingly way more accepting of different
yeah,
genders and all kinds of different things than we are today.
yeah. And I don't know. I think our relationship with our how good enough we feel as men, that definitely ties into to mental health because for me, growing up, if I were to share a little bit about myself, um, growing up, like the experiences that I had, I was bullied a lot in middle school, so that kind of affected how I viewed how good enough I was as a man, and I internalized that, and so like once you internalize that, it can like create a lot of anxiety and depression, and that's how your relationship with your identity can kind of affect your mental health. I see it as like intertwined, and I think sometimes we don't see it that way, but I definitely see it that way when you carry so much toxic shame or around like how how you feel you're not like good enough as a guy, um, that that affects your mental health. And like along points in my own journey, I had to redefine what I felt like what being a guy or being a man is in the world, because someone like my dad can have a version of something of what being a guy is, but it doesn't align to my authentic self. So I don't know if that hopefully that made sense. I kind of went off
No,
on in a tangent.
no, it totally makes sense, and I want to actually dig deeper into it. Do you have a definition of modern masculinity? Like, what would you say, the current version of being a guy is?
It's my definition is just being your authentic self. But even when you say that, it's like, well, what is that? Because
How do you know? Yeah.
some people, like me, for a while, I was kind of disconnected from myself in a way, because I didn't want to, like, even as a highly sensitive person, I was disconnected from like my emotional experiences, which kind of disconnected me from my authentic self, because I didn't feel safe to be my authentic self. And I think when men start to show up as their authentic selves and they accept who they are, I feel like that is what being a man is. It it's not necessarily about like the standards of like the tough guy, or um, having like a certain body image that's not it's not really you, which I feel like a lot of people struggle with, especially with my generation. But yeah, it's all about being your authentic self and discovering your authentic self for a lot of us.
Yeah, can you say more about that discovery process? Because I think you're right. When you tell guys like just be yourself, a lot of guys are like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I
You
feel
know?
like if you're disconnected from yourself like I was for a while, then you're not really going to know what that is. Or if you're afraid to be your authentic self, that's not going to it's going to like that's when the masks come up as like I see masks as kind of coping mechanisms for like anxiety or fear of being yourself. So like for example, for me, I kind of was I would say like one of my masks is like maybe like a detached uh, personality in a way. Uh, Not fully, but to some degree. Like I had that because I didn't want. I thought that being a sensitive guy was inherently wrong, so I had like the a mask of like being detached, or kind of like a stoic mask. And once I once I changed my mindset about uh, being a guy and expanded it, I was able to embrace that part of myself and develop more authentic connections where I meet people that are like, oh no, there's nothing wrong with your sensitivity. So like it's like when you change your narrative and you meet people like that are like kind of mirrors to your true self, then you don't have to wear that mask. And I think that's why guys can be disconnected from themselves and not live off their um, true to who they are, and that does create a lot of like anxiety and depression, because if you don't know who you are, then you're not gonna like have a core sense of purpose, and then you're gonna like just do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, if you don't know who you are, you don't have a compass, right? Like you don't know
Yeah,
you
you
don't know
have
what
like
matters to you. Yeah.
yeah, but I feel like maybe men might not go that far because we're maybe taught that what's on the surface is what matters. We focus so much on image that we aren't connected to ourselves, because we start from the image, and then we're just like, as long as I look good, as long as I perform, the performance is a huge thing. Performance and perfectionism is a huge thing, especially for me, because if you feel like the way that you get validation is through your performance, um, whether it be like how you work, or how you do in school or whatever, if your performance is based on that, then that's kind of there's no room for knowing who you are because you're focused so much on performance. Like
And
then,
it's all focused on other people's opinions about you. So very
yeah,
specific, what grade you get or how much money you make or
yeah,
you know,
like
how,
money. Oh, money. We're doing money next week.
so
So yeah.
it's a key one. So I want to bring you back to the body image thing because you've mentioned it a handful of times. Can
Yeah.
you expand upon that a little bit? Like, how does that show up in your generation? What is the, ideal body image? Is it like the Avenger, right? Or is it like Arnold Schwarzenegger? Or like, what are guys moving towards? Like, and how does it
So
best for you
what
personally?
I'm noticing is, um, I think like what you mentioned, like that Avenger, that look of like uh, I think it's like like that look at the like six pack or just having
Yeah, like the
being like
superhero
so,
body, right?
yes, being so like muscular, strong, and I think if men don't have that, then they feel less than about themselves. And I feel like we do something wrong when we make that the standard for everyone. And when that is the standard, then people that don't have that, or they're trying to modify themselves to be something that they're not. And that could be the same thing can go with like the masculine, like the different mask. Is like there's a standard of being like emotionally detached, but when you're not when that's not you and that's not your experience, then you feel that there's something wrong with you. So it's like a shame thing when like people are like scrolling. When you scroll and see all these bodies, you feel shame about yourself because you feel that this is like I have to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about the
Yeah.
social media thing. I was, I
Social
think,
media.
yeah, fortunate that I didn't have a smartphone until I graduated from
What's
college.
interesting is
Right? Like it was plugged into your brain.
what's interesting. You're asking the wrong person because I'm not on social media.
Oh, good. Good. You're doing
Not
the
on
right thing.
social. I'm not on social media. I haven't been on social media since COVID, so I'm not on social media. But from like my friends' perspective, they say that like they feel kind of discouraged within themselves because they see something that isn't them, but they feel they have to be, and it's like kind of they're sometimes sold. It's like right there, like you're seeing it, and if that's like images in your brain, then you're going to feel that this is what I need to be, when really it's not. When I was on, that's funny that you mentioned it. When I was on TikTok like years ago, when I was in high school, um, I was not happy at all. I would be on TikTok for hours, and I would just like feel so lonely that I didn't have like this group of friends that I see on TikTok or hanging out with each other, or my life doesn't look like this. So that's but since 2020, I haven't had TikTok. So yeah,
You're doing the right thing. Yeah.
yeah.
You, you're going to be, I think, like separate from the generation, but in a good way. You know.
A lot of my friends call me an old soul, but I embrace it.
You should
Yeah.
do it. 'Cause, yeah, I see that a lot with my young clients. Like you said, it's like, especially like the fitness influencers, right? You see these like jack
Hmm.
dudes doing crazy shit. Or there's always influencers that just like give away tons of money or do all these like kind of like pranks or gags or whatever where there's like throwing away cars and shit. And it's like, oh my God, how can you compare yourself to that? Like, that's like
Yeah.
a fake person, you know?
Yeah. It's just this is not. If it's not you, then why do you feel that you need to be that way? And there's so many things that like I'm into gardening, I'm into collecting vinyls and stuff, but and I'm also into like I like fashion, so it can be some of those hobbies can be seen as like, oh, that's for girls. So so it's just like over time I was like, you know what, it's not, it's just we've made it that way.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I mean, one of my masculine values is mastery, right? Like getting good
Hmm.
at shit. And what I tell my dudes is like, I don't care what you get good at, but like be good at it. Like,
Yeah.
right? Be a master fashion shopper,
Yeah.
right? Like really know shit about vinyl. Like just like master your domains. Because I think
Yeah.
that is masculine. It's like just the pursuit of greatness in some way, shape, or form. But the actual
Yeah.
flavor is very, very secondary to what you have to learn, right? The act of learning and discipline and self-improvement and iteration, like those things, those kind of deeper levels, I think is what makes you a stronger man. Doesn't matter like what you're doing it in, you know?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, my biggest question I wanted to ask you was, what have you noticed? Because me as a, like, because, well, you're a therapist, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Because you definitely inspire me. Because I want to, this is what I want to go into. But my biggest thing is, what have you noticed with men? Like, what are some common themes that you've noticed with the clients that you've worked with?
Yeah, so it's very interesting because with a lot of my guys, they come to me during a low point in their life. So for a lot of it's
Mm.
divorce or substance abuse. Those are kind of the two big ones. You know, they have some horrible incident, they drink too much and they blow up Christmas, right? Or they had a divorce. And a lot of them are like surprised and pissed. You know?
Hmm.
I think for a lot of guys, it takes like a really hard knock at the door to have their eyes
Yeah.
open to needing to look at their emotions and their mental health.
Because there's
You know,
so
they're
many
not
like
even
things.
thinking
There's so
of,
many things that
yeah.
can cloud that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many guys. I'll tell you that, like, you know, after working with them for 6 months, they're like, "Oh, I guess I was pretty depressed," you know, or
Yeah, yeah.
anxiety. Like they weren't even aware of it.
They don't
Whereas,
have the language.
your generation, it's like you know what it is, right? You can say like, "Oh, I'm an anxious person," or "Oh, I struggle with depression." Like the language
Yeah.
is out there. But for a lot of my dudes, it's like they have to almost in retrospect do they realize that their mental health was in the toilet, right? It's not until
Hmm.
their like life blows up that they even start to consider it in a way. You know?
Hmm. Yeah. I
So
guess like a I guess like another thing I might want to ask is what have you noticed about like have you worked with like young adults from Gen Z? What have you noticed about us and like how we like some common problems?
yeah, I mean, I think there's some positives and negatives. I think like a lot of the positives we've talked about. I think your mental, you know, your EQ was way higher than mine was at your
Hmm.
age, like 10 times, like a whole fucking other level of EQ.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you guys, yeah, are just even aware of emotions and vibes and what you're doing with, you know, gender and sexuality is like so far beyond what, you know, my generation did. And I think that creates a lot of space in people.
Hmm.
I think the negative that I see with people is like, I think your standards and expectations are really, really high. So I
That's
think it leads to like
yes,
a lot of
I
disappointment.
agree.
Yeah, a lot of disappointment
Yeah.
and loneliness.
Yeah.
I think y'all get frustrated very quickly when
Yeah.
things don't go like exactly how you want it to, or you know exactly
Hmm.
how you thought it will go. So
Perfectionism.
perfectionism, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like on perfectionism, which I think on the one hand is good because I think you have like really high goals and aspirations and dreams, and like I want to nurture that as a therapist, and I see
Hmm.
it also as something that creates some fragility, because when it
Yeah.
doesn't go that way, I can see it's like easy to like throw in the towel or give up.
Because
Because
there's,
okay, you know you did it 70% of the way, like let's just
yeah.
keep going, right?
And I
Like
think
keep
a
going.
huge thing maybe for my generation is living in the moment.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we're so like uh, fast paced with everything that we feel like we need to always move on to the next moment to like achieve that thing, but we don't like appreciate the journey.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely true. I think it's like very future focused and can be like outcome focused. I think you know I think most men are outcome focused. It takes us a while to like slow down and like really feel where we're at. You know?
Yeah, and accept that too.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and I think
yeah,
I think being a young man is hard because it's like
yeah.
you're just aware. You become aware that you're the bottom of the totem pole.
Hmm.
You know, because I think there is a hierarchy. I mean, it sucks, but I think it's there. And I think like I remember when I was your age in college, I became painfully aware of like, oh shit, like I don't have any money. I'm like not really in good shape. I'm not dating anybody. I don't have a job.
Yeah,
You know, like you just become aware that you have to. There's so much to go. You know, there's so much to
yeah.
go, and you look around at older dudes that like have done that work to some extent, and it's like, oh
Hmm.
shit, you know, am I supposed to be this guy? Am I supposed to like already have a career and a wife
Or
and a family and a
like who am I
car?
supposed to be?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that is always like that question, and I feel like we find that through discovering our true selves,
Mhm.
so that can like rid some of those standards. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one thing I love about your generation that I feel like my generation didn't have is I find that by and large, and men included, are way more artistic and creative. Like I find that your
Okay.
generation like really values art and
Hmm.
creation, whether it's like fashion or drawing or music or something.
Hmm.
Um, I see a lot of that in your generation, way more than in mine. I
Hmm.
think mine was still more like sports in a way,
Hmm.
whereas I see it's like become a much more like creative, cultural type of thing with your generation. I'm curious if you see that.
I see that. I see that a lot with content creation
Yeah, yeah.
and those platforms. A huge thing with my generation is YouTube animation as well.
Hmm.
So different, like there's different mediums of creativity, whether and I feel like the benefit of social media is being able to express yourself and develop a community out of that. Whereas maybe like years ago, you probably weren't like as open to express your creativity in a way that would find you can find other people to discuss to be creative with.
Yeah, totally, right. I mean, I find
Yeah.
that some of my Gen Z clients, like, they just have this awesome talent on the side. It's like, oh yeah, I'm also a musician, right? Or like, oh, I also
Yeah.
like sketch, or I also like do, embroidery or whatever, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
always, there seems to be this like real art appreciation that I think is cool. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I love art, and I feel like a lot of my generation didn't quite have that in a way, right? It was much more like monoculture. Whereas I think
Hmm.
your generation, there's so many subcultures that people can plug into now.
That's I think that's that sorry that's my generation a lot, and um, and a big thing for me that I value and so much, and I've done like a lot of reading on this, is about shame and vulnerability and the work of Brene Brown. I'm really like I read a lot about like I read I think all of her books and just watch her speeches and stuff, and that's like something that I didn't think of. I think I might have to go soon, but that's something that yeah, I have to go soon. But before we sign off, that's a huge thing for me, and that's what I've used to make men's college and to make the spaces where guys can come together. Is first recognizing shame and why men struggle with shame so much. Because I feel like the root of a lot of problems, like maybe like body image or um, having like different masks, is like the root is shame. But if we learn that vulnerability takes courage and it takes a risk to be vulnerable, then we'll feel empowered to engage in those spaces, to practice vulnerability and to establish um, safe connections.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think the current frontier is the mind and the emotional space. So I think it is courage. I think that's where men are finding their courage and their bravery is taking these risks. So I do hear you got to wrap up. As we're
Oh
moving
yeah,
towards
because I'm in the library, the school library.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then we feel like where can people find more about you or listen to the show online?
Huh.
Where can people find out more about you or listen to your
Oh,
podcast?
so it's the Instagram, Men's Couch Instagram, and Spotify. That's like where we are right now. Because we just started, we started October of 2023. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to put all that stuff in the show notes. You can go check out the Men's Couch. You can check out Micah Blackwell and his work out there. It's really great to speak with you. It's awesome to have you on this
Yeah.
show. I've enjoyed it. If you're listening, yeah, give us all the social stuff, like, share, subscribe, do all that. Share it with somebody, maybe a Gen Z who's looking to, open up a little bit more, be more vulnerable, be authentic. Direct them over to Micah's show, The Men's Couch. And we'll see you next week on the episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast.
Cool.
Okay, great. So I had to pause the upload. Yours will be uploading. If you do have to go, I could send you over a link that you can then open when you're on another Wi-Fi network to hook
Okay.
up.